Jordan, and welcome to the Sports Behind Show. So far, NFL free agency has been absolutely crazy. There's been things you expect. There's been things you didn't expect. I'm going to take a kind of a deep dive into all the moves the Bengals have made so far. Going to kind of be talking about some of the other NFL moves that's happened so far throughout the NFL. It seems like every single time I look at my phone, there's more moves happening around the league, whether it's trades, signings nobody expected to happen, huge, contracts, top players signing with teams we didn't expect, and different things like that. So we're going to go ahead and talk about, pretty much all things Bengals so far, what's happened. There's been some good things that's happened with the Bengals. There's been some bad things that's happened with the Bengals. But it's been absolutely crazy. I don't think anybody expected this to happen with Cincinnati. When you look at Cincinnati heading into free agency, I would say there was probably about a 95% chance Jermaine Pratt was going to leave Cincinnati. And, 95, percent chance him leaving. That 5% honestly was kind of pushing it. It just seemed like there was no way Pratt was going to end up staying, especially with all his kind of like cryptic tweets on Twitter and everything like that. And with, to me, it kind of seemed like the Bengals might have valued Logan Wilson more than Jermaine Pratt. But it's absolutely crazy. Jermaine Pratt's price to me was probably around the 10, 11, maybe 12. I would say that was the limit heading into the offseason, what he was going to get per year. But when you look at Jermaine Pratt, we have to thank TJ Edwards for this. Like TJ Edwards signing with the Chicago Bears for 3 years for $19.5 million, to me, is pretty much the sole reason Jermaine Pratt is staying with the Cincinnati Bengals. Jermaine Pratt re-signed with the Bengals on a 3-year deal worth $21 million. And this is absolutely crazy. TJ Edwards, most people thought he was going to get way more than that, 3 for 19.5. I thought he was going to get probably around the 10 range. So the fact that he kind of set the market signing before Jermaine Pratt was really, really big for Cincinnati, because to me, I felt like if TJ Edwards did not sign before Jermaine Pratt would have had a lot more money per year, and the odds of Jermaine Pratt being on his team right now maybe not be that high. Pratt ended up signing a 3-year contract with the Bengals for $21 million. I'm not trying to be biased. I try to tell it how it is. But when you look at so far throughout these free agency signings, this by far has to be one of the biggest steals of free agency so far. And I know this is only day one, but when you have to look at Jermaine Pratt was projected 10, 11, maybe $12 million, he nearly split that in half. Like, that is so crazy to me. I just don't understand, why he signed for so cheap, how the Bengals got him to resign for so cheap. Like, that's insane to me. Like, I'm really surprised with this. This is just kind of mind blowing to me. It's just wild. Like, nobody thought Jermaine Pratt was going to stay in Cincinnati. 3 years, $21 million. He's going to be making $10.5 million in year one. So when you combine his second and third year, he's only making just barely over $5 million each of those following 2 years after his first year's up. That is insane. He should have been making, to me, at least double that. I mean, Pratt is a guy who, was a rookie in 2019, 2020. We kind of saw potential, but we didn't know what he was going, to bring to the table. We just had to see it there. And then in 2021 year, he had an absolute breakout performance. I mean, he obviously had that major pick against the Raiders in the playoff game. 2021, was his best year up to that point. It was a breakout year for him. You can make a legitimate argument that this past season, he was even better this year than he was last year. He's played 4 years in the league. Each year he has increased his tackling total. This is a huge signing for Cincinnati. Like, I'm very surprised Cincinnati ended up re-signing Jermaine Pratt. Dennis Perry here. Who do you think the Bengals and what free agents coming to Cincinnati? I kind of did the video talking about this earlier today, and I'm probably going to mention a couple more times here throughout, more people, joining here in a little bit. But if I had to pick one outside free agent that the Bengals end up signing, I've said this a couple of times in some videos. We did some, free agency mock simulators and stuff like that. But if I had to pick one outside free agent that I think the Bengals end up signing, I think it's edge rusher Clelin Ferrell. I really think this makes a lot of sense. When Clelin Ferrell played for Clemson, he was coached by the Bengals defensive line coach, Marion Hobby. So there's already a connection there. And when you look at the Bengals and you look at some of our coaches, the Bengals have experience. So some of these coaches that we have right now, coaching guys from prior to being with Cincinnati. Look at Zach Taylor with wide receiver Mike Thomas. He coached him with the Rams. Look at Eli Apple. Lou Anarumo coached Apple when for a short stint when Apple was with the Giants. Even look at Marion Hobby. He's a newer defensive line coach for Cincinnati, but he coached DJ Reader when he was at Clemson as well. So to me, if I had to pick one outside free agent the Bengals end up signing, I think it's definitely Clelin Ferrell. It's interesting because it's one of those situations where, when you're heading into this offseason, I thought kind of offensive line, linebacker, they were probably target those two positions. But I don't know really what you would, sign now and what you would do now, because I feel like even with these just two moves that happened for Cincinnati today, it kind of, can change their, perspective of what they're going to do in free agency and what they do in the draft. When you look at Jermaine Pratt, nobody thought he was going to resign. But here's the other crazy thing. Nobody thought Von Bell was going to leave Cincinnati. Like, that is insane. It was pretty much expected that Von Bell was going to stay with Cincinnati. I would say, I said that 95% that Jermaine Pratt was going to leave Cincinnati. To me, it seemed like there was a 95% chance that Von Bell was going to stay with Cincinnati. I am just as surprised with Von Bell leaving Cincinnati to go to Carolina as I was Jermaine Pratt staying. So when you look at the Bengals, we already knew Jesse Bates was going to leave, and that was something else why I thought Von Bell was going to end up staying, was because, the Bengals, I don't think they're going to prioritize keeping Jesse Bates. It's well known Bates was going to leave. Maybe it's going to be Atlanta, San Francisco, Cleveland, who knows? But when you look at the Bengals right now, all of a sudden, safety is by far your biggest glaring hole on not just your defense, on your whole team right now. Because you have Daxton Hill, who only had 2 games this past year where he played 10 defensive snaps or more. That's very, very alarming. And then you also have the rookie from this past year, Tyson Anderson, who was, I don't think he played at all this past year. So when you look at it, safety is now your biggest issue for Cincinnati. There's been, lots of tweets these past hours or so with, it was just reported, Rappaport just tweeted Jesse Bates to the Falcons. That's crazy. When you look at Jesse Bates, it was reported that he was with, Kyle Pitts, AJ Terrell, and Casey Hayward in Atlanta eating dinner. But also when you look at it, I didn't think people should have read into it too much because they all share the same agent in David Mulugeta. But Bates to the Falcons is official, with Rappaport just tweeting that right now. So when you look at Bates is gone. Von Bell is gone. Like, this is now an issue for the Bengals. You knew Jesse Bates was going to leave. It was just a matter of time till he was going to leave. You just didn't know what team he was going to go to. But now the fact that Von Bell was gone, like, that's very concerning for the Bengals, and kind of goes to what I'm saying. Like, you have Daxton Hill and Tyson Anderson. Both those guys were safeties last year. You have to address safety in free agency. And when you look at the Bengals right now, like I was saying before, it was reported that Bates is leaving for Atlanta. There was lots of tweets the past hour or so that CJ Gardner-Johnson, there's talks about him possibly, signing with the Bengals. Gardner-Johnson was, kind of sharing and, quoting tweets of Bengal players trying to recruit him to Cincinnati, like Mike Hilton and several other players as well. So you don't know how much you want to read into that. I did see right before I started recording here that Johnson was pretty much only quote tweeting and tweeting Bengals tweets. So you don't know if it looks like he's going to sign with Cincinnati, or if you don't know, he's kind of just like trolling fans and stuff like that. But that would be an amazing pickup for Cincinnati if they're able to get Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You don't know how much truth there is that he might sign with Cincinnati. Von Bell's been really good his last 3 years in Cincinnati, but Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is an upgrade over Von Bell. And it's very interesting because when you look at Cincinnati, this is kind of a similar situation a couple years ago. When you look at the Bengals, when they lost Mackenzie Alexander was a very reliable slot corner. They lost him, like, whoa, crap. He was pretty good. It's going to kind of be hard to replace him. The Bengals ended up signing Mike Hilton, and looking back, I feel like they got the better end of the deal with that. Mike Hilton is a better player. He's had better production than Mackenzie Alexander did his 1 year with Cincinnati. So maybe, who knows, that could be kind of a similar situation if the Bengals end up signing Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. But Von Bell, it's official. He's signing with the Atlanta Falcons. Rappaport just tweeted that a couple of minutes ago. So Pratt stays, Bell leaves, Jesse Bates leaves. I don't think anybody expected, Bell to leave. Like, that's just really crazy to me. Pratt staying is just kind of crazy. Nobody thought that was going to happen. Jesse Bates, like I said, it was expected. We all knew it was going to happen. Ever since Daxton Hill was the first-round pick last year, it was pretty much the expectation that Jesse Bates was going to leave in the offseason. But this is really crazy. When you look at the Bengals right now, there's still several players to me I think they should be looking at here. One player in particular, I know this is not a household name. I know people aren't talking about it much because I know there's much bigger needs right now than a backup quarterback. If I'm Cincinnati, I'm looking at a guy like Gardner Minshew possibly to replace Brandon Allen as a backup quarterback. I'm looking at a guy maybe like Teddy Bridgewater to be a backup quarterback. Teddy Bridgewater and Gardner Minshew are both 10 times better than Brandon Allen. If I'm the Bengals, I'm definitely looking at the possibility of getting a backup quarterback here if they don't want to keep Brandon Allen. But with Teddy Bridgewater and Gardner Minshew both in the market, to me, I don't think that would be a bad idea. But I really like the idea of getting a new backup quarterback behind Joe Burrow because I don't think Brandon Allen is a guy who can help this Bengals team win if Burrow were to go down. But it's really crazy. I mean, we're not even officially a day into free agency, and all these moves that happened. I mean, Jalen Ramsey got traded yesterday. Nobody really thought that was actually going to happen. I've seen some people, some Eagle fans say, "Oh, a third-round pick and a backup tight end. I would have traded that, for Ramsey easily. The Bengals should have done that." I don't think the Bengals should have traded for Ramsey. I feel like they did the right thing by staying put and not going after Ramsey. Ramsey's a good corner, but he's having over a $20 million cap hit each of the next 2 seasons. And when you look at the Bengals, you're going to have to expend Burrow, Chase, Higgins, and several other players. I mean, we have guys like DJ Reader, Hendrickson coming up in free agents in a year or so. So if you add Jalen Ramsey to that mix, that would have been even worse for the Bengals to try to keep all those guys. But so far, as of right now, the Bengals have kept Jermaine Pratt. Bell and Bates are gone. They also re-signed safety Mike Thomas. I don't feel like that's a bad signing there. He's a pretty good special teams player. And when you look at the Bengals, it seems like they value a lot of the special teams like players. Look at Mike Thomas, wide receiver. When we had Clayton Fedulum, a couple years ago, it's very interesting how much the Bengals kind of prioritize these couple of really good special teams players. So, like I mentioned, I know somebody commented who the Bengals should be looking at in free agency. I feel like the top guy right now, obviously he's not the top guy in the market, but if I had to pick one outside free agent, I definitely think it's Clelin Ferrell coming to Cincinnati. I know it's a name that's not being talked about a lot. A couple other players here I would really like the Bengals to go after. This will probably not happen now. The odds of this happening wasn't really likely, but with Jermaine Pratt staying, the odds of this are pretty much zero now. There were some people talking about maybe Bobby Wagner can come to Cincinnati. That would have been a huge boost to this Bengals linebacker corps. Bobby Wagner has expressed, he wants to go to a team who's a contender. So when you look at Bobby Wagner, there was maybe a slight chance he was going to maybe go to Cincinnati if Jermaine Pratt left. But, Pratt shocked everybody, and now he's staying. So Bobby Wagner is pretty much out of the mix now. That was somebody I was kind of hoping the Bengals looked at here, but I feel like, honestly, when you look at Jermaine Pratt, he's a guy who's got better literally every single year he's played. He's improved his tackling every single year he's played. He's only getting better. I feel like the Bengals did the right thing by re-signing Pratt instead of going after a guy like Bobby Wagner who might have a year or two left, especially considering the fact that we got Jermaine Pratt for so cheap. I mean, 3 years for $21 million. That is just crazy to me. I really thought he was going to get about double that. A couple of players here. I wouldn't be opposed. I wouldn't be upset if the Bengals maybe looked at. Taylor LeWan, I know that's kind of I feel like most people are either, oh, let's go with Taylor LeWan, or they're, no, this guy is not worth the type of deal. I feel like there's no in between. You either want Taylor LeWan or you don't. I don't really want him, in my opinion. I know some Bengal fans do. When you look at this offensive line for the Bengals right now, some of the offensive linemen are just absolutely falling off the board. You look at McGlinchey, you look at Jawan Taylor. Both those guys are off the board here. So when you look at tackles, they're kind of quickly getting signed. So there's not really a ton of guys left. Taylor LeWan is really good. He's so injury prone. When he's healthy, he's one of the best left tackles in the league. But that key word is when he's healthy. Since the 2018 season, he's missed 35 games. When you look at the Bengals, to me, people talk about this Bengals offensive line being terrible this past year. I don't get that at all. Towards the end of the season, they were way better than people realize. When you look at the Bengals offensive line, you've had season-ending injuries to La'el Collins, and you had season-ending injuries to Jonah Williams. 2 tackles. If you and Jonah Williams has 1 year on his deal because the Bengals were stupid and gave him a 5th year option. If you bring Taylor LeWan to that mix, you're probably getting rid of Leo Collins. You're probably going to move Jonah Williams to right tackle. If he can't play left tackle, a position he's played ever since he's played in the NFL, he definitely is not going to play better at right tackle coming off a season-ending injury with just 1 year left. I mean, we had injury issues last year. Adding Taylor LeWan to the mix is only going to make it worse. So that's one of the reasons why I don't want Taylor LeWan. I know some people do. I really just don't get it. Like, I feel like it's not worth it. He's going to get hurt. It's just a matter of time till he got hurt. So I feel like the Bengals would probably be best staying put, not getting Taylor LeWan there. Aaron Petrie, Bengals don't generally sign older players, but I'd like to see them sign Patrick Peterson. Oh, yeah, 100%. I saw, he was saying that he wouldn't mind signing with Cincinnati. He wants to go to a contender. And when you look at the Bengals, I've kind of said this before a couple of times. Some people said, oh, well, it's not nearly a need as some people think. Corner is a much bigger need than some Bengal fans realize. When you look at the Bengals corner situation right now, we have Eli Apple as a free agent. When you look at Awuzie, he has 1 year left in his deal, and he's coming off a season-ending injury. So, we have Eli Apple possibly to re-sign. You don't know if he'll re-sign. When you look at Chidobe Awuzie, without a doubt, our best corner right now, he's coming off a season-ending injury, having 1 year left on his deal. That would, suck if we lost him. You need to get more depth at corner, which would be very good for the Bengals. When you look at Patrick Peterson, I just saw that he signed with Pittsburgh. That absolutely sucks. Realistically, it's one of those things like it sucks that Patrick Peterson signed with the Steelers, but it's not like, there was talks about the Bengals and Patrick Peterson this whole offseason. When you look at, the past couple off seasons, there's kind of been a player or two Bengal fans kind of fixated about, signing. I know 1 year it was Joe Thuney, and then there's, some other guys. The Patrick Peterson to Cincinnati thing really came out today. So it's not like it was gaining traction a ton. It does suck that he signed Pittsburgh, but yesterday, nobody really thought Patrick Peterson to Cincinnati was going to be a thing anyway, if that makes sense. But, it does suck that he signed with Pittsburgh. You're signing with a contender. The Steelers are good, but I don't think they're a contender when you have to play the Bengals twice in the same division. Prime says, Houday, yeah, this has been absolutely crazy. Pratt stays, Bell and Jesse Bates leave. So as of right now, like I said, the biggest question mark to me is now what the Bengals are going to do with safety. I know some people heading into the offseason maybe thought, what are they going to do with the offensive line? Kind of going back to that, talking about Patrick Peterson there going to Pittsburgh. But the offensive line, I just don't see why the Bengals would go after Taylor LeWan, because when you look at it, he's just so injury prone. Jonah Williams is injury prone. He sucks. He has 1 year left on his deal. I would take Taylor LeWan if he was 60% healthy over a 100% healthy Jonah Williams on the field. 100%. I don't think Jonah Williams is good. I've said it for the past year, and now people started to ride the hype train that Williams isn't good. I would not shut up about that. This 1 year ago around this time, I would not shut up about it because he wasn't good. Now people finally start to realize Williams is not good. But if you add Taylor LeWan, it just doesn't make sense because it's another injury-prone tackle. Leo Collins was a bust. You know the Bengals are maybe going to draft a right tackle, maybe sign a right tackle. And it's really crazy to me. Leo Collins said he was going to be Burrow's bodyguard. We were so freaking happy to get Leo Collins. He was terrible. Like, I know Joe Mixon sucked this year in the rushing game. Pass catching game, he was good. But to me, when you look at the most disappointing player this year, past year for the Bengals, I think it has to be Leo Collins just because all the hype and everything like that. But you don't know what's going to happen to him. And with these tackles, I'm saying, like Mike McGlinchey, Jawan Taylor, several other these players gone, the expectation wasn't really that the Bengals were going to sign those top guys, but those are still guys off the board now. So people might panic and sign some of these left tackles or right tackles for a higher price because several of these right tackles are quickly going off the board. Mike McGlinchey signed with the Broncos, and Jawan Taylor, I believe he signed with the Chiefs. But it's going to be interesting what the Bengals do, what the Bengals do on the offensive line. Aaron Petrie, yeah, I agree about LeWan pass. Yeah, I just think it's entirely too risky. And when you look at Taylor LeWan, his contract that he would get will probably be to me, probably about $6 million, $7 million. We got Jermaine Pratt for that. Like, I mean, if you think about it, if the Bengals waited and if Pratt and LEWAN were still free agents a couple of days from now, if the Bengals would have signed LEWAN for that price, they would not have had enough money possibly to sign Jermaine Pratt. So I just really think Taylor LEWAN is too risky of a signing for Cincinnati. Hopefully they stay away from him. A couple other players here I'm really interested to see the Bengals go after. I know some people have talked about McGlinchey a little bit. I know some people talked about Taylor LEWAN. McGlinchey's already gone. LEWAN, I don't think that's a good idea. Some people have mentioned Bobby Wagner. He's 100% off the board now with us re-signing Jermaine Pratt. One player I really want the Bengals to look at here. I don't know why this is not talked about more. Like, I really don't understand. I want the Bengals to go back after Larry Ogunjobi. I think this makes so much sense. I don't know why it's not being talked about. I really don't. It's crazy to me that people are not talking about this more, and it's crazy that Bengal fans are not wanting Larry Ogunjobi back. I don't think people realize how important Larry Ogunjobi was to this Bengals defense during the 2021 year. I mean, this Bengals defense was really good, and Larry Ogunjobi was a big reason for that. This past year with the Steelers, he had 1.5 sacks, 7 tackles for loss, and 11 quarterback hits. In the 2021 season with us, his only season with Cincinnati, he had 16 quarterback hits, 12 tackles for loss, and 7 sacks. Those are pretty good stats for Larry Ogunjobi. But to me, I think he's one of those players, kind of like DJ Reader. He's underrated, he's good, and I feel like he's way better than the stat sheet kind of shows. Larry Ogunjobi, to me, coming back to Cincinnati will be great. I know defensive tackle is not a desperate need, but I would not be shocked if maybe the Bengals maybe reach out to him on a cheap deal and maybe try to win a ring with Cincinnati. But, this past year with the Steelers, I was just really ticked off he signed with Pittsburgh because, he was supposed to sign that 3-year deal with the Bears, but he failed a physical. And looking back, I feel like the Bears probably are glad that, signing did not go through because they have all this, money now, and they're signing all these top guys, trading for all these guys and top everything like that. But Larry Ogunjobi, to me, I feel like that's somebody the Bengals, I really hope they should be looking at here. See if there's any, signings as of the past couple of minutes. But it's crazy. Like I said, I didn't think free agency was going to be like wild or really unpredictable. But in the first day, it's exactly what it's been. When you look at some of these signings here, not really anything big. Actually, this one isn't big, but it is kind of interesting because this was going to be a player I was going to talk about next. When you look at former Texans edge rusher Obo Okoronkwo, there was the Bengals. There was rumors that they were linked to Okoronkwo these past couple of days, but he just signed with the Browns on a 3-year deal worth $19 million with a chance to make $22 million. He is $12.5 guaranteed. That was from Rappaport about 10 minutes ago. On the Bengals, I'm very glad that they did not, go after him because that has the chance to go up to $7 million a year. Like that's the same, has potential to be the same amount that Jermaine Pratt is getting. And with our edge rushers right now, when we have Hendrickson, when we have Hubbard, one of the most underrated edge duos in the league, I don't feel like the Bengals should be signing any edge for that type of price. When I mentioned Clelin Ferrell, I think he would get at the absolute most $2 million. I feel like it's a low-risk, high-reward type of signing. I feel like Okoronkwo, though, when you looked at him, if the Bengals signed him, it was kind of it's a little bit risky, and it's kind of risky considering the price what he got. But I feel like the Bengals are better off, staying put there. They don't end up getting him. He signs with Cleveland. Let's see here. Daniel Barry, Sports Highlights, what's going on. When you look at, all these signings, it's absolutely crazy so far. Like nobody expected some of these signings. It really makes no sense. Javon Hargrave, he signed with the 49ers in a 4-year deal with $84 million. When you look at this, San Francisco defense now, it's freaking insane. Hargrave, Bosa, Fred Warner, so many other star players. I mean, there's no reason that 49ers team should, not be a 12-win team next year. Like they just when you think they might go down, a little bit, less wins, they get a huge signing in Javon Hargrave. He leaves Philadelphia, and I expect more players in Philadelphia to leave. When you look at the Eagles, they have just so many players who are free agents. They lost both their offense and defensive coordinators. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens with Philadelphia. Like I mentioned, Jawan Taylor, right tackle. He was with Jacksonville this past couple of years. This past season, he had by far his best year ever since he's been in the league. He signs a 4-year contract contract worth the Chiefs for $80 million. Connor McGovern, he's a guy I thought was extremely underrated heading into free agency, one of the more underrated players in free agency. He signs a 3-year contract worth $23 million to go to Buffalo. When you look at Buffalo, you look at all the Bills hype. To me, when you look at it, I just don't like this Bills hype. I think it's ridiculous. There was already talks about the Bills possibly losing Jordan Poyer. I don't think he's been signed yet as of now, unless he's been signed like the past couple of minutes, but you don't know with all these crazy signings happening so fast. But Tremaine Edmonds signed a contract worth the Chicago Bears for a 4-year contract over $70 million. So when you look at that contract, I know that doesn't really – I know when you first take a glance at the contract, it might not really affect the Bengals, but kind of it might a little bit, because when you look at Tremaine Edmonds, he's been such a vital part to this Buffalo Bills defense ever since he's been in the league, and now he goes to Chicago. When you look at the top teams in the AFC, it's the Bengals, Chiefs, and Bills. When the Bills lose a star player like that, it's going to be very hard for them to get a replacement of that guy's if Edmonds' caliber. So it kind of helps the Bengals there, because I don't think the Bills will be as good on defense this upcoming year. Like I said, McGlinchey, he signs a 5-year contract, $87.5 million with Denver. I mean, I feel like they overpaid him a lot there. I was thinking like 13, 14, but they go 17 a year for him. Denver also signed Ben Powers to a 4-year deal worth $52 million. I thought Ben Powers was probably the most underrated free agent in the entire free agent class. When you look at him, he had over 1,000 snaps last year for Baltimore. He did not allow a single sack. But I'm very surprised how much he got from Denver. I feel like Denver, it's basically now or never for Russell Wilson. I mean, they overpaid the crap out of 2 offensive linemen. So there's no reason the Broncos should be bad this upcoming year. But it's going to be interesting. Aaron Petrie, Spotrac has Eli Apple and Trey Flowers projected. That is not even remotely close to being true. I've seen some of those projection cap hits and stuff like that. I don't know where they get that from. When you look at, I think it was PFF, they had a projected, million per year based on some of the Bengals free agents. They had like Von Bell getting like 7 or 8, which is like kind of predictable, kind of thought what, he would get. But they also had, PFF had a projected contract for Hayden Hurst to get like 9 to 11 a year. I don't know where they get that from. There's no freaking way Hayden Hurst would get 9-11 a year. And if he would, the Bengals aren't signing him. I can pretty much almost guarantee you that. That would be incredibly stupid for Cincinnati. But, Spotrac has Eli Apple and Trey Flowers projected at 11 to 12 million per year. Trey Flowers isn't going to get more than 3. That can't be right. I'd like to see Eli back. I've said this before. I'm not really a huge fan of Apple. I feel like Bengal fans overrate Apple, but I feel like the national media just underrates Eli Apple so much. I feel like Apple is better than people give him credit for, but since he's in the national media, just everybody always talks about him in the national media, landscape and stuff like that. But, projected 11 to 12, I just don't understand why that would be so much, because what's his face? The corner from the Patriots, cannot think of his name, signed for like 10 or 11 million, who's like one of the better corners in the league. He's had very 2 productive years. Jonathan Jones, I'm thinking. I think that's right. Signed a 2-year deal worth about 2022, and they're projecting Eli Apple to get that same contract. Yeah, that's crazy. Apple, he had I think a 1-year contract with $4 million last year, $3 or $4 million. I would expect him to probably get the same. Now, if I'm Cincinnati, even before the Jermaine Pratt re-signing, honestly, I thought Von Bell was most likely to resign, and then following him, I thought it was going to be Eli Apple. I still think Eli Apple will end up resigning with Cincinnati. I think it'll be maybe about a 1 for 4, maybe 1 for 5, or maybe they have a multi-year deal, maybe 2 for 10, something like that. I would not expect Eli Apple to get more than $5 million per year. He's a reliable corner at times. He's not as bad as people make him out to be, but I feel like if he gets a pay increase compared to last year, it's not going to be by a lot. But yeah, Apple 11 to 12. I mean, if that were to happen, there's no freaking way the Bengals would re-sign him there. The other teams overpay for these tackles. I completely agree. Like, I just don't understand why they are overvaluing tackles so much. Jawan Taylor, up until this point, was okay. Like, he wasn't great. He was about average. This past year, he played very good. I think he played like 98 or 99% of the snaps for Jacksonville or something like that. And then he's getting 20 per year. Look at Daron Payne, his huge contract. I forgot what the numbers were for him in Washington. I think he becomes the second highest paid defense tackle in NFL history. He was great this past year, but you have to look at Daron Payne. I mean, he was a trade candidate in October. And up until this point, he was not even really close to living up to his, first round, talent that he was drafted in. Rappaport just reported that Jamal Dean re-signs a contract with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. That was a guy who, wasn't really linked to Cincinnati, so it's not like the Bengals lost out on him type of deal. Let's see if there's any signings here. Nate Davis, offensive lineman, signs with the Bears on a 3-year deal worth $30 million. It's interesting because, when you look at Nate Davis and when you look at this Bears team's actually looking really, really solid now. You sign Tremaine Edmonds, you absolutely rob the Panthers in that trade. I still cannot believe the Bears got DJ Moore. DJ Moore, I've said this lots of times, he's the most underrated receiver in the league. I like him more than most people. And I know Bears fans, heading into the offseason, they were very fixated on getting T. Higgins. I don't know where that came from. I know we as Bengal fans, we knew that we were going to be trading T. Higgins, but Bears fans still thought they were going to get Higgins. But instead they get DJ Moore and multiple top draft picks. On the Bears, I'm very happy about that, getting Moore and some draft picks. So Scheffler reported this, not Rappaport. So Bates is a 4-year deal with Atlanta, $64 million. That includes $23 million in year one and $36 million in the first 2 years of his contract. He's now the 4th highest paid safety in NFL history. Yeah, I'm super glad the Bengals did not re-sign Jesse Bates. That is a way, way, way overpay. Like 16 a year, that is ridiculous. Jesse Bates, his first 3 seasons of his career, had at least 100 tackles and at least 3 interceptions. When you look at Jesse Bates, the last 2 years, he's failed to get 90 tackles. I think this past year he had 4 or 5 interceptions. Those interceptions, 3 or 4 of them, were very deceiving because it was one of those situations where he was just at the right place at the right time. I know we had the deflected pass that he was just right there. He caught against the Jets. But Jesse Bates, a 4-year contract, worth $16 per year. He gets over $20 million in year one. When you look at the Bengals, there is no possible way they could have afforded that with, re-signing Bates on that type of deal, especially when you look at all the players the Bengals are going to have to deal with when it comes to free agency-wise and re-signing in these next couple of years. That is just wild to me. Like, it's such an overpay. I was thinking he was going to get 14 at the most. And it was one of those deals, if he was willing to sign for 12, I would not have been entirely upset if the Bengals wanted to re-sign him. But, I mean, that's double Jermaine Pratt. All right, think about that for a second. Jesse Bates got double what Jermaine Pratt is getting on average per year. Jermaine Pratt's been better than Jesse Bates each of the last 2 seasons. A linebacker is more important to your team than safety. Like, that is crazy. Definitely glad we are not signing Bates. I know it was pretty obvious we weren't going to, but looking at his contract now, and even makes me more glad we did not end up re-signing him. But it makes me really upset we did not keep Von Bell, because that's going to be very interesting. I know I've said it, but you don't know what the Bengals are going to do now with safety. I'm going to mess Jesse and Von. I like to see the Bengals re-sign Hurst, but I'm not sure about the tight end market. I've seen some people say that the Bengals might go after Mike Gesicki. I don't know how much truth there is to that. I know there's several nice tight ends in the market now. We have others, Dalton Schultz, Austin Hooper, Gesicki, Hurst, a couple other players just cannot think of right now. But when you look at the tight ends right now, to me, I feel like you'd be better off just keeping Hurst if you're wanting to get a experienced tight end. Like, if you're wanting to draft a tight end, okay, whatever, you don't re-sign Hurst if you don't want to. But I feel like Hurst is probably just a better option. Hurst is going to be cheaper than Dalton Schultz. Hurst is going to be cheaper than Hooper. I would imagine he's going to be cheaper than Gesicki. I would probably imagine that. But Hurst, he had a career year this year. It's, he's really liked Cincinnati. He said it kind of brought his love for football back. And when you look at Cincinnati, I just feel like it'd be a nice place for Hurst to play a couple more years. Maybe they draft a tight end in rounds 2 or 3. Who knows? And they keep Hurst. Or, if they don't re-sign Hurst, I feel like that definitely opens up the door about them possibly drafting a tight end in round 1, especially if Michael Mayer from Notre Dame is available. But I don't know. It's just so interesting because if Pratt left and Von Bell stayed, I would feel like we kind of have a general idea of what was going to happen with the Bengals. They might go after offensive line. They maybe would go after a tight end or re-sign Hurst. But now the fact that, safety, you need safety. You're pretty much good at linebacker now, unless you just want to sign a guy on like a 1-year cheap deal or something like that. It's very interesting because I feel like, some of these moves early on in Cincinnati that did not go their way can kind of change how they proceed to go in free agency or maybe the draft, depending on what happens. Some teams aren't very good with their money. Yeah, it's crazy because the Bengals used to be one of those teams. I mean, looking at this Bengals team, 2020, we signed DJ Reader and we signed Trey Waynes. DJ Reader was a very nice signing. He was a top-tier free agent. We look at Trey Waynes. That kind of speaks for itself. He was probably the worst signing in franchise history. That's definitely debatable, but it's just so crazy. Looking at the time, 3 years ago, 2020 season, we were having to pay not top-tier players, top-tier money just to come to Cincinnati to play for a crappy team at the time. And now when you look at Cincinnati, they are signing some guys for cheap because they want to re-chase. They're re-signing some of their guys because they love what's happening and they love what the culture is building in Cincinnati. But it's crazy just a couple years can make. Brown's got another pass rusher, Joe Mannix. That's the same one I already kind of mentioned. Obo Okoronkwo. That's who you're talking about. Yeah, I know there was kind of talks about the Bengals going after him. That's kind of been mentioned the past day or two. But it's interesting. A lot of these, players have kind of been, rumored or linked to the Bengals the past couple of days. Okoronkwo was one. Somebody else, to me, I don't get it at all. It just kind of came out of nowhere. Is the idea that the Bengals are interested in Jamal Williams. I just don't understand that. When you look at Joe Mixon, he was terrible this year. Like, very, very bad. But if you go after Jamal Williams, you're going to have to cut Mixon before you would sign Jamal Williams, I would assume. And cutting Joe Mixon right now is not a good idea for Cincinnati at all. If you cut Joe Mixon right now, you save $2 million. If you cut Joe Mixon post June 1st, you save $8 million. So clearly, the obvious thing what the Bengals should do if they decide to release Mixon is to just wait till June 1st. But this Jamal Williams rumor to me is interesting. I don't really buy into it. I just think it's kind of strange. It came out of nowhere. I mean, he would be a great locker room guy, but to me, I would fully expect the Lions to end up re-signing Jamal Williams. I'd kind of be very, very surprised if he didn't end up re-signing. But if you're just tuning in, kind of talking about some of these big free agency signings here, Bell leaves, unfortunately, shocked people. Pratt stays, shocked even more people. Jesse Bates signs a ridiculous contract with the Atlanta Falcons, a 4-year deal worth $64 million. Very glad that the Bengals stayed away from even attempting to re-sign Jesse Bates. And it's crazy, after the 2020 season, when Jesse Bates was eligible for a contract extension, we were all very upset, like, oh, the Bengals should have re-signed him. Now we're going to have to make him the highest paid safety. And looking at it now, I feel like, this might be better off for the Bengals just, did not sign him on a long-term deal in the first place. Because 2020, that season, he was the best safety in the league. There wasn't really much debate for it. But ever since then, he's just declined in play significantly ever since then. And you can just tell when he plays, he's trying to play not hard and stuff like that, trying to play for a contract. But I kind of briefly mentioned some of these contracts here. When you look at some of these, other teams, Hargrave, like I said, the 49ers, Jawan Taylor to Kansas City, 4 for $80. Connor McGovern, 4 23 to Buffalo. McGlinchey, 5 for $87 to Denver. That's wild. And then what's even wilder is that the Broncos signed another huge deal to an offensive lineman for $52 with Ben Powers TJ Edwards, 3 for 19.5 to Chicago. When you look at Cincinnati right now, that's kind of the big signing to look at here, because without that, Pratt doesn't stay. I know I said it earlier, talking to different people, it just makes so much sense. If TJ Edwards does not sign that contract, I guarantee you Jermaine Pratt would have signed a bigger contract, whether it was Cincinnati or elsewhere. But TJ Edwards, that's a crazy cheap deal for Chicago. I mean, when you look at him, Tremaine Edmonds, I mean, they got Nate Davis, DJ Moore. They're really, really looking like a team who could, be good in a year or two. All those draft picks. And then one move here, I actually kind of like this move a bit here. I know it's not really talked about because, I mean, there's far bigger moves happening right now than this one happened earlier. But Jonnu Smith getting traded to Atlanta for a 7th-round pick. When you look at Arthur Smith, the head coach of the Titans, he was offense coordinator with the Titans when Jonnu Smith was there. Already familiarity. For a 7th-round pick, that's a steal to me. The Patriots, that signing was just a bust. I mean, him and Hunter Henry, there was so much expectations for both those guys. It was kind of weird signing two kind of big tight ends at the time on the same offseason, and neither one of those guys have really panned out for New England. One move that hasn't happened, let's see here. Bengals are going to need to sign a corner, safety, tight end, and running back at least before the draft. Let's see here. We'll start with corner. Yeah, I think we're going to, I think we'll re-sign Eli Apple. I would be very surprised if Apple left. Yet again, I thought for sure Von Bell was going to stay, and look what happened there. But I just feel like Eli Apple will end up staying with Cincinnati. Safety, I kind of mentioned, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson has, quote tweeted and retweeted lots of tweets from Bengal players this past couple of hours. And you don't know if he's trolling. You don't know if he actually is going to come to Cincinnati, because holy crap, that would be huge. Like I said earlier, that's kind of like Mackenzie Alexander and Mike Hilton. You lose a good player, but you upgrade the same position in the offseason. But safety, that's definitely up there. It's something you have to get done. Tight end, it's interesting because I feel like if they sign a tight end, they would probably re-sign Hayden Hurst. But I mean, you don't know. Like I said, there's been some reports about them interested in being with Mike Gesicki. You don't know how much truth there is to that. Maybe you got Austin Hooper. Maybe some of these other tight ends. You don't know. Because honestly, looking into last season, I don't think nobody thought Hayden Hurst was going to be on this Bengals team last year. Nobody. It was a pretty much guarantee that C.J. Uzomah was going to re-sign with Cincinnati. He shocks everybody and signs with the Jets. And it's not like Uzomah was a great player. It was just so surprising that he signed elsewhere. And then once Uzomah left, to me, I thought Gerald Everett, the tight end who is now with the Chargers, made a lot of sense because Gerald Everett spent time with the Rams when Zach Taylor did. So there was already a connection there. And then, he signed somewhere else. And then the Bengals signed Hayden Hurst. So it's kind of crazy. You think you have a general idea, and then the team might do a completely 180 and make you look really stupid. But tight end, it's interesting because I feel like they don't sign Hurst. I feel like they're probably going to maybe draft one. Maybe it's Michael Mayer in the first round, or maybe a mid-round guy. And you also say running back. I don't know about running back. Like I would look for the Bengals to re-sign Samaje Perine, but outside of Perine, I didn't really see any running backs the Bengals would sign, because if the Bengals sign a running back, not Perine, I feel like at that point that would kind of be Mixon's replacement, and you just don't know how that would be. I feel like if the Bengals replace Joe Mixon, they should do it in the draft. It would save them money. I feel like you're better off that way. Pretty much everybody knows running back is the most easiest position to replace in football, and I don't like the idea of signing a guy with a decent contract for running back when you can just draft one far more cheaper and get nearly the same production. Thomas Clark says, let's go get Shaq Griffin. That'll be interesting. You don't know where he will go. Maybe he goes back to Seattle. Gardner Johnson would be a big signing. That would be huge. And it's weird because you didn't really expect Cincinnati to, sign a top-tier free agent. At least I didn't expect them to. But I feel like Chauncey Gardner Johnson, if you do that, that would kind of be your top free agent signing here in the offseason. Thomas Clark, draft tight end, signed a corner and a safety along with a tackle. Let's see, that's interesting. Drafted tight end, I wouldn't have an issue with that. But if you draft tight end, you're probably not signing Hayden Hurst. If we sign a corner, I think we're going to retain Eli Apple. And safety, if you take away Chauncey Gardner-Johnson, I don't really know who. Like, there's not a ton of safeties that to me there's linked to the Bengals. I will say one thing about the Jermaine Pratt deal that helps the Bengals a lot because that extra $4.5 million could really help the Bengals when it comes to giving just a little bit more money to a guy who might want to sign with Cincinnati, but with the extra money, they might be more willing to sign with the Bengals. And with a tackle there, I'm really, really against the idea of signing Taylor LEWAN. If you sign a tackle, I would feel like it'd be more of a depth signing. I wouldn't expect them to be a starter over a guy like Leo Collins or Jonah Williams. See if there's any signings here. That Jamal Dean re-signing with the Buccaneers was 4 years for $52 million. Patrick Peterson's deal was the Steelers with a 2-year deal. Kind of an interesting signing here. The 49ers signed Sam Darnold to a 1-year contract. That's kind of weird. I mean, when you look at the 49ers now, they have Purdy, they have Sam Darnold, and they have Trey Lance. I don't get it. Trey Lance was the 3rd pick in the draft just 2 years ago, and people are completely forgetting about him. It's kind of wild to me. Let's see here. John Johnson from Cleveland, if he's available. Yeah, that's very interesting because I don't know if he's been officially released yet. I think he has. But Cleveland, they were, he has been released. When you look at the Browns, they were going to release John Johnson of hopes of signing Bates. So they completely struck out on that, which I'm glad with. I know Jesse Bates was the completely overpay, but I mean, if he didn't sign with the Bengals, I just did not want him signing with the Browns, which is, looking back, right now he signs with Atlanta. That's a good thing he didn't sign Cleveland because that would suck having to play Bates twice a year. But, John Johnson, that's somebody the Bengals you should definitely look at here. It says the Chargers, according to Jeremy Fowler, the Chargers are one of the top teams interested in John Johnson. As of right now, the Eagles are also kind of looking at him here. But I don't know. There's just so many moves. It seems like might be a big move 1 minute, a smaller move the next minute. Let's see if there's any kind of moves I did not talk about here. The Obo Okoronkwo, that was a guy who was linked to Cincinnati. I kind of mentioned it. The past couple of days, he signs with Cleveland on a 3-year deal up to $22 million. That's really kind of crazy how much he's getting for a guy who had just 5 sacks last year. One signing, to me, I like this signing a lot. It's not a Bengals signing. But Jimmy Garoppolo signs with the Raiders on a 3-year deal worth $67 million. That is a fantastic signing. I know some people won't like it. I've been saying Garoppolo to the Raiders for weeks now. It just made so much sense because when you look at Garoppolo, he spent time with the Patriots with Josh McDaniels. Josh McDaniels was the quarterback coach and the offense coordinator when Garoppolo was with New England. And I believe there was 2014 to 16. I believe those were the years they were together. And with the connection there. And, just because Jimmy Garoppolo went to the Raiders doesn't rule out the idea that the Raiders won't take a quarterback on round 1. I feel like that, honestly, maybe might even open the door for them a little bit more. This has potential to be best case scenario for the Raiders. You sign Jimmy Garoppolo to a 3-year deal, and then you have a chance at the 7th pick if Anthony Richardson, CJ Stroud, Will Levis, or Bryce Young, any of those 4 guys are available there, I feel like you take them. And Garoppolo would be kind of like your bridge quarterback. You would stay with him for a year or 2, and then the quarterback that you draft would eventually take over as a starter. But I really like that signing by the Raiders. It just makes so much sense. If he can stay healthy, it's a safe signing. Like, I feel like it's a good signing as long as he can stay healthy. He's not great. He's not going to wow you with his numbers like Burrow or Mahomes, but he wins games. That's what matters most. He's a great game manager. Looking at some of these other signings here, the Vikings waived Cameron Dantzler and Washington claimed him off of waivers. Let's see here. Keenum signs with the Texans on a 2-year deal. There's not really this past 20 minutes or so, there's not really been any major signings here. But it's very interesting to see what else will happen with the Bengals. I mean, this is kind of crazy what all has happened so far with Cincinnati. I don't think many people expected this to happen. So far, when you look at the Bengals, I was an expectation that Bell was going to resign and Pratt was going to leave, swap them, and that's what happens. Kind of crazy. Jay Morrison posted a safety snaps count from 2020 to 2022. So look at the last 3 years, the most snaps by safety. Von Bell is number 2, and Jesse Bates is number 3, and we lost both of them. That's kind of concerning when you look at that. That's very interesting. Looking at this list here, so 2020 and 2022, in 3 years, the top 2020 2022, the last 3 years, the top 10 snap counts for a safeties. The Bengals have number 2 and number 3. Not a single team has another player in the top 10, and we no longer have either one of those players. That basically just shows that the Bengals need to prioritize safety, and the money that they kind of saved from the Pratt. Pratt was on a cheap deal. The money that you didn't have to offer him should go towards Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. You really need to get a safety, and that just kind of shows it there that the safety right now all of a sudden is a major need for Cincinnati. You just don't know what's going to happen. Looking at other signings here for Cincinnati, I don't really see any, but I mean, it seems like as soon as I'll be done with this video, that's when there'll be another signing. But let's see. Not really any signings for Cincinnati. Like I said, they, I think it was yesterday, they re-signed safety Mike Thomas. It's one of the best players for us on special teams. But kind of the recap, Bates leaves for Atlanta, 4 for 64, 23 in year 1. That's crazy. Von Bell leaves for Carolina. I don't think those contracts, the contract for him has been released yet. We re-signed GERMAINE PRAT, 3 for 21. Such an amazing deal for Cincinnati. One of the biggest steals so far in free agency. And, kind of some of these top signings here. Like I said, Hargrave to 49ers. Jawan Taylor to Kansas City. Let's see here. McGlinchey to Denver. And TJ Edwards to the Bears. I know it's not a huge signing, but that's the reason why GERMAINE PRAT is with the Bengals right now. And a couple players I kind of mentioned earlier, a couple players to me I'm going to be looking at in the next day or so, if they're still available, or maybe the Bengals will end up maybe going after them. That is Gardner Minshew, also throw Teddy Bridgewater in there, Clinton Farrell, and Larry Ogunjobi. Like I said, I would really like the Bengals to get a new backup quarterback to replace Brandon Allen. All the outside free agents, I really feel like Clinton Farrell is the most likely to happen. But thank you all so much for watching. I've been kind of talking about this for an hour now. Might do this tomorrow and Wednesday, depending what happens in free agency, depending what all the moves the Bengals end up doing these next couple of days. But thank you all so much for watching. If you're new to the channel or seen my videos before, I would really, really appreciate it if you can like this video and subscribe to my channel. Thank you all so much for watching, and we'll see you all next time on the Sports 2 Hein Show.